Hi, it's Shazia. I'm back again, and I wanted to do a video on this thing called the Zohar. Um, not the Zohar like the book, not the Zohar like the person, but the Zohar, Tzohar, which is a precious light glowing inside of a stone. And we find reference to the stone in Genesis 6:16. You know, it is said that it was passed to Adam when he was expelled from the garden to give Adam something to remind him of what he lost by sinning, right? Um, from Adam, it went on through the generations to Noah. Noah carried it on the ark, and when it's what gave the light in the into the ark. They call it the window or the skylight. They say that it was the Zohar hanging in it, right? Um, from Noah, it sank into the water, and it went into this cave, right? And when the waters receded, um, it was found many years later. Um, Actually, it was found by Abraham, and Abraham was in this cave um, because he was born in it, right? And he was born in it because Nimrod was chasing after, trying to kill all the babies who were going to be born. So his mother fled into this cave and gave birth to him, and she abandoned him there. And while Abraham was there, an angel came from God, and Abraham was aged like 1 year for every day that he was there, and when he was 13 days old, he was actually 13 years old, and the angel had put this stone on him, right? Like a necklace. And his mother came back for him, and she found a young man instead of a baby, right? Now, with Abraham carrying the stone, it was said that everyone who looked at the stone was healed, right? Anyone who looked at it who was sick or afflicted, they were healed of their affliction, right? And when I read through this, I had to think of, the shadow of the disciples healing people, because in the New Testament we find that when the disciples walked through a room, even their shadow brought healing to the ill, you know. So I found some correlation between the power that this stone had and the power that Jesus left in us, right? Um, from Abraham, the stone passed to Isaac and to Jacob and then to Joseph. And actually, when Joseph fell into the pit, when his brothers threw him into the pit, it said that the stone was glowing, and it was the stone that kept the snakes at bay, right? And also in Genesis 44, Genesis 44:5, where Joseph had given the cup, he had snuck it into his brother's saddlebag. Um, it was the cup that Joseph used for drinking and for divination, and they said that the way that Joseph did this was he placed the stone inside of the cup, and looking at the stone in the cup, he would see like the interpretations of the dreams manifested in pictures in the cup. Um, it was also said that Joseph was buried with the stone, and when Moses removed Joseph's bones, it was the stone that was carried with him, that brought the waters to part and, worked all the miracles, and this is like the eternal rights in the sanctuary, in the tabernacles, right? Um, another thing that happened with it, um, was that it was in the belly of the whale with Jonah, and it brought light into the whale. So it's kind of like all God's chosen people carried the stone in the Old Testament, which is kind of weird because it takes the power of God and puts it into a stone. You know, it puts it into something tangible. And when I think on this, I think it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't make sense because when we need the power to be placed in something tangible, then we understand why the Israelites fell into sin so much because they needed to create something tangible, like the stone. You know, they were like replicating the stone through creating idols like the golden calf and whatever else they as share a pole and whatever else there was, you know. So you kind of get understanding, but the stone wasn't meant to be used for like witchcraft. It was meant to be a reminder of the paradise lost, right? But the stone, it was lost when the temple was destroyed, you see, because it was kept in the Ark of the Covenant. And when the ark disappeared, so did the stone, you know? And so that's where they say the glory left Israel, you know? That's where they say that they lost the Shekinah glory of God, you know, the favor of God. And well, not really the favor, because I do suppose that they still experienced some favor, but they didn't have the same glory. They didn't have the prophets anymore, you know. They didn't have the great teachers like they had in old. There was no like miracles being worked because they had lost the stone, right? But it's interesting that, you know, when the stone was lost, you know, Jesus was walking the earth, you know, and we saw that the same power that was contained in the stone is contained in the man, and it's the man without the stone working this power. And it's so hard to understand how man could contain the power, because it had to go into something that was not breathing, not killable. It had to go into a stone before, and now we see these powers being made flesh, and we see it manifested not just in Jesus, but throughout his disciples along the way. And we see that we didn't really need the stone after all. All we had to do was bring God into us, you know, or acknowledge God in us, you know, Christ in us, our hope of glory, you know. We see we see how things change so much because we no longer need the tabernacle and the ark and, you know, all this religious phenomenon. You know, we only need to accept the spirit within us and be guided by it, you know, and it brings us healing, and it teaches us, and it comforts us, and it leads us, and it guides us, you know, like the word of God. You know, it's the lamp unto our feet and the light unto our path. You know, we don't need it in a stone because we carry it in our hearts, right? So I really thought that this was pretty amazing, but I think that it's important to look at the history of how it had to evolve, you know. It had to be introduced into something that was not killable before it came into man, and then man was slave. You know, Jesus, he died on the cross for us, right? Um, but carrying on, you know, the disciples were persecuted and enslaved, you know, and still we see the persecution of Christians, right? Because when you put God into something that's tangible, that's killable, you kind of destroy him, right? Every single time, because you can't compete with that power, right? So I was just thinking that I understand why kind of the Jews don't accept Jesus so much, because, you know, he has to bring mass revelation. So it's not just like one person holding the power, you know. It's like everybody is covered as children of God. You know, this is to get into this point, we have to go through this tribulation thing where the wicked are weeded out, and where everybody has to like bow before God, you know, and submit to his will and his ways, and carry on in this in the way that he intended us to live as we lived in the garden, you know. But it's missing something. Um, but it's kind of understandable why. In a minute, Ben. Okay. It's kind of understandable why they would slay him, and instead of because they didn't understand that they weren't supposed to kill him, they were supposed to submit to him, and they would get this power for themselves, you know. It says it in one of the proverbs that there's a way that seems right to man, but its end is death. You know, killing the Messiah, killing the Christians after, you know, killing all those who contain, you know, the glory of God. After it's a mistake, it seems right to you, you know, because you're coming under judgment and you want the judgment to stop. But that end is death, because in the only way to get through the judgment is to be forgiven in it, you know. And this is God's point. This is why he delays judgment so much, is because he wants you to be forgiven, you know. It's his will and his purpose and his plan that all men turn away from their wickedness and come into him, you know. Return to him. He'll return to you. He'll be your teacher. He'll be your healer. He'll be your provider, you know. He'll be your everything, you know. You just have to return to him, you know. And Jesus gave us that invitation to return, and it's up to us to accept it, you know. It seems like it's end is death, but it's not. It's the right path to take. It's the only path for survival. And, and for the tribulation that's coming upon us, we have to understand this. You know, if we go back to our roots in Judaism, we have to understand. You know, God put it in this rock in the beginning because you needed to carry the glory with you, otherwise you would die, right? But God changed it because, you know, the glory can't be kept for one specific group of people. The glory is for all of the earth. It's for all of humanity. The Jews were supposed to be a light to the world, you know, and because they didn't fulfill this task. You know, God had to change things up, and so then he had Jesus to be the light into the world, and he says, all of you come to me and I will give you rest. It's a personal invitation for mass revelation, you know. And in the end, we're gonna just have the mass revelation, but there'll be like a great shaking that comes forth before it, right? um, and the only way to get through the shaking is to find him, so that you can be led by the Holy Spirit, right? So that you can contain the glory of God yourself, you know? And so we have to switch things up a bit in order to walk in the newness of God, right? Because the old ways don't work. Yesterday's instructions don't work. Yesterday's instructions were for yesterday, and we can't find tomorrow by yesterday's instructions. Otherwise, you know, we're locked out of our future and we're stuck in darkness. There's a new light for tomorrow, and we all have to make the choice to come into it. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Zohar, learning how it went from being something tangible and indestructible to being man, to being the whole world in the end, right? So that's what I got for y'all. Have a good day.